This is Lori Brunner, my Module 9 case study for AEP 855. To summarize the case, we have two students who have been charged with a felony offense for having illegal weapons on school grounds. Principal Richard Inman was involved in making personal connections with students at his school, and he doesn't feel that both sides should receive the same consequences. James is a 15-year-old who has been in trouble in previous situations, and David is a standout honor student who plays in the band, and he was given something by James that was observed by another teacher. Plus, there was a student resource officer there. This was at Rocket Junior High, which I don't believe it was a junior high. I'm thinking that the name is junior high school, and it happened during fifth period. Again, the others involved are fifth period teacher, both students' mothers, and the director of secondary education. The legal or ethical issues. Has anyone been harmed by the action? I do believe that David has been emotionally harmed due to the bullying by James. Both men have been charged with felony, which could be permanently on their record. Does the action or the situation contravene an existing law? We are not given that information as far as what their city, their county, or their state, so we don't know if there was a law that was broken. We need more information to determine that. Was there a breach of contract? Yes, I believe that Principal Inman, since he discarded the form for David on his behalf because he felt it wasn't warranted, was a breach of contract. His contract with the school is to enforce the policy, and he was not enforcing the policy. Principal Inman was also directed to fill out the form or have a reprimand put in his file. A reprimand is a serious offense, but he was not subject to any legal action or possibly getting fired. So to synthesize this information, David has been caught with a weapon given to him by James, and the principal is inquiring about the facts of what has happened with the school resource officer. The school's policy is zero tolerance policy on weapons, so both have been charged with weapon possession and have been recommended for expulsion. The facts are that Principal Inman, James, David, the fifth period teacher, the school resource officer, and mothers of both of the young men and the director of secondary education is involved. This was at Rocket Junior High School, located on the south side of town, which implies to me that it's probably a more poorer neighborhood. This was during fifth period of school, and since it was in a poorer neighborhood, both families could be at a lower income level or possibly one. Maybe the other one is more middle class. This was a public high school, and it could possibly be during freshman or their sophomore year, and it is not known if anyone has an IEP or any other modifications pertaining to school, whether because of academics or behavior. Could the conflict or the situation or the decision be damaging to the stakeholders or the community? I feel that it could. The families involved could be ridiculed. If the principal decides that one is going to get a more severe consequence than the other, then it could be seen as favoritism. So I do believe the families involved could be damaged. Who else is at stake? Well, either student have an impact as well as the groups that they associate with at school. Have all the relevant stakeholders been consulted? We were not notified if the school board had been told of this incident, and if they were, then they should have taken it up at the next school board meeting. Do I have enough to make a decision? Well, technically, no. I still would like a little bit more information, whether they have an IEP or other modifications. What are the legal ramifications for the bullying? Has this happened before in the past with James? What's his family life like? Has he, is he seeing a counselor? Things like that. I think there's more information that could be pertain to this situation. So these are the options. The first one is to do nothing, which obviously that's not an option because the school policy is to do something, which is the second option. Charge both with felonies and expel both according to what is stated in the policy. Or third, there are some in the middle decisions that could be made, like don't involve the student resource officer, take statements from both individually. The consequences are based on fault as far as James, or no consequence due to bullying by David. Both could be reprimanded and do community service and take a conflict resolution course. Or they could also advocate for each other's position in a speech class or an assembly. So these are the pros and the cons, evaluating my options. Student resource officer is not involved, which could be a good thing because then it's up to the principal. Since he's the main investigator, he could get all the facts. By taking the statements individually, he could meet with each student one-on-one to get both sides of the story. The consequences are based on fault. Maybe David indicated that he would be willing to do this. Well, then it wouldn't be all of James's fault. Or if there are no consequences for David, since he was bullied into doing this. And in the statement, it said that he would, kick something in order to, if he didn't take it. So I do think that both would be reprimanded to community service. Taking a conflict resolution class would be awesome because James could learn how to avoid the situation, how to handle the situation, and David could learn to stand up for himself when this is presented to him. He could say, no, I don't want to be involved in this. To advocate for each other in a speech class or student assembly, then that way they could see the other person's side and relay it to others. The cons are both would be expelled and or charged, or no action is taken. Maybe the board policy should be reviewed and changed based on circumstances, which some people could say, well, that's a pro. Well, in this instance, since it's already stated, now you're trying to go back and change something that's already in place. So for future, yes, that could be in future discussion, but for right now, that would be a con. If the principal received a reprimand for not following policy. So my best option, after taking the statements from both students, this is what I would suggest. That consequences for James would be an out-of-school suspension for a week. That he would be given community service hours, and he would complete the conflict resolution class due to his negative record. And again, as I stated, so that he would learn how to deal with, first of all, not having a weapon, not trying to kick somebody or doing bad things to them after school, just to avoid that. Then the consequences for David would be a 1-day in-school suspension. Since he was involved in this, he still has to have some consequences. He would advocate for his position on the situation during a school assembly and complete the conflict resolution class so he learns to stand up for himself or others. The principal, the students, the parents, and the school board would come to an agreement on how to make this equitable for all parties. Since it is said that it takes a village to raise a child, I do believe a village is needed to raise a child. It's very hard to do it on a one-on-one basis and make these kinds of decisions. This will also show students, faculty, and the community that the school looks at all factors before making decisions on all information. So to implement this, of course, we start with the principal taking the statements. Without the SRO, the facts would be presented to the school board with resolutions to the current stringent policy. Parents should be involved with this and their students so that, again, it's a community effort. The principal should be able to handle this in his school since he knows the students and the best recourse for each student. Diversion is a program that assists teens when they have been found to have drugs or alcohol or paraphernalia or if they're high. And I do believe that such programs should be in place for weapons and bullying, especially since bullying is such an emotional issue right now. If this plan doesn't succeed, then I think a meeting with the school board on changing the policy due to circumstances. And I'm pretty sure there's legal precedences that could be found out in libraries. Thank you for listening to my presentation.